For the third time in the last week, which seems like a lot more, we're going to ask ourselves, is this the win that gets the Guardians back on track in 2024?
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
On today's show, is this a season-saving win? We'll discuss if that's possible. We'll probably jump back into more of our talk from yesterday about the psychology of slumps and streaks in pro sports and just how the Guardians are handling this overall. Talk a little about Manuel Clase and what he has to do to significantly be in the Cy Young race. Jeff's got interesting stats from yesterday on the Guardians' hit rate on position player draft picks. And we'll talk a little bit about the second half or the rest of the season, really, and possible September call-ups.
Thank you for joining us today. For those who do not know me, I am Jeff Ellis, one of your two hosts here, and one of the original co-hosts of the Locked On MLB side of things. Before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7, and before that, I was your seventh favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has or will exist.
Is this an actual number we can guess
Yes.
on, or are you just
yes?
Okay?
It's an actual number.
They won a game, so Jeff is back in the mood of making you guess why he was a certain.
It's an easy one today.
favorite
Everyone
blogger.
should get
Okay,
this
it's an
one.
easy one. I'm just going to go 7 for Kenny Lofton. Anytime I hear Kenny Lofton sent out number 7 for me, so that's why I would do that. It's not Kenny Lofton. Okay, don't guess Kenny Lofton.
Don't guess.
I'm bad. I've been bad at these. I'm Justin Ladd, other co-host. I've written at places like Guardians Baseball Insider, the News Herald, the Morning Journal, sometimes Prospects Live, and other fun places covering the Guardians minor league system all the way back since 2007. Seen the Guardians make a lot of comebacks. I've seen them let a lot of seasons slip away in that time, and a lot of them where September call-ups were not what I thought. And that was back in the day when September call-ups could be anybody. You could flood the entire bench up to like 30 players.
I think they need to find a happy medium. I think they.
Yeah, two seems too little.
Little. Agreed.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand why you can't have like 30 people and like just dress 26 for that game.
Teams don't want to pay.
Hockey. Is it that what it is, you think?
It's probably. I mean, in the end of the day, it comes down to money. Everything comes down to money.
Fair enough. That's fair. Guardians finally got a much-needed comeback against the Royals. This was a very surprising game. It was 5-1 and into the 7th inning. You know, Tanner had 2 pitches that I'm sure he would like back to Massey and Bobby Witt. Then he passed Pasquantino. I don't know. I think you tip your cap on that one. It was a curveball away from the plate, and the guy just pummeled it. Then he passed Pasquantino. I was a big fan of him coming up. He just hit everything hard all week. Like, I got to the point where I was like, "There's like, are they tipping pitches? Is like, I'm not going to accuse anybody of cheating because like you can't sign steal anymore with the pitch com, but like, I'm like, are they tipping pitches? Because Vinny Pasquantino was hitting everything over 100 miles an hour. I mean, the home run he hit today wasn't even that hard. The other balls he hit today were that hard, but he just hits everything. So 2 or 3 pitches away from this game being a heck of a lot easier. The Royals just hunted fastballs off him, but he had a lot of good sliders, a lot of swings and misses there. I think he'll be better. This little roller coaster of a game was a lot of fun, though. Look at this. As late as the 7th inning, Jeff, this game, the Royals had a 90% win probability as late as the 7th inning, and that's where the fun began.
And Ersig's really good. They had to come out there and do it against a
go figure.
Arguably, to me their best reliever in terms of pure stuff. And they had 6 hits in that inning. By the way, the most hits they had in any other game was 7. So they had 1 less than the highest number of hits they had in any other game in that inning. They reported live on the air that the dugout was deathly quiet. Like, they needed this. And, and one other just fun random fact for Josh Naylor. I was bored, so I checked this out. It was his 5th 3-hit game, his 2nd since Baltimore at the beginning of August. Last year he had 10. So that's, he gave up a little bit of the contact for power, and I still don't know if it was worth it this year.
Yeah, because he was always a guy who had, 25 home run power. Now he's going to get into his 30s, but with I don't know, it's been a consistency thing for everybody on this team, truthfully.
Yes.
But Yeah, they got to Lucas Erceg in the 7th inning, which is amazing. You know, they kept the pressure on Michael Wacha. He came out. Lucas Erceg came in, and all but one of those runs was charged to Wacha, so he gave up 5. But Erceg hadn't given up a run until today, until Wednesday. He had not allowed a runs since the Royals acquired him. Like Erceg and Dylan Carlson, this is hilarious, and I guess Jazz Chisholm too, because he's been playing really well. But there's a whole other side to that. But the 2 best players acquired at the deadline were Dylan Carlson, who again nobody wanted. We were joking in the captain's press box Tuesday night, like we were talking about how the Guardians were rumored to be interested, and it was like nobody was like, no, don't do that trade. And he's been the best hitter since the deadline. The best pitcher since the deadline's been Lucas Erceg, who again the Royals got for basically nothing. I'm not no insult to the players traded, but like didn't take a whole lot for the Royals, who don't even have a good system to give him up.
Well, he should have cost more. That's just one of those that I don't understand
Oakland's,
why he's so cheap. Like Paul DeJong had a great series. It was a weird series. But like I understood why he was cheap. I didn't understand why Lorenzen was as cheap as he was, because pitching was hard to get. But and can I just say, like, nothing brings people out of the woodwork to be negative. And there are certain people, like, I'm just kind of curious, like, I know they won't be in there today, but it's like, why do you only show up to be negative? Like, well, how is that a fun life to live? There wasn't a lot of great stuff at this deadline. As much as everyone's like, you can't say, well, I would have traded for, you know, Aaron Judge if Aaron Judge wasn't traded. He wasn't available. It's the same thing with any other guy. It was a weak deadline because too many teams thought they were in it. Texas should have been selling pieces. The Giants should have tried to. The Giants just cut 3 dudes. They could have probably gotten something for Rodgers a few weeks ago. Now they got nothing. Like, teams keep thinking they're in it when they're not in it, and then you got the teams like Oakland and Colorado that just won't sell guys until they make
terrible deals.
No,
Oakland didn't even make any good deals.
I know Oakland hugs until they held on to Blackburn for too long and got nothing for him. They hold on to guys for way too long instead of selling at peak value, and then they get
So the Guardians, ironically enough, finally got the hit parade going when it was, Wacha was pitching great, and they got to Erceg. Erceg allowed an earned run and took the loss in this one. So I guess that's great. They didn't hit the ball particularly hard in the 7th inning. It was a lot of bloops. You had a Will Brennan bloop, John Kensington had 2 hits. None of them were above 75 miles an hour. And who was Josh Naylor's single in the 7th inning was not hit that hard. He did have a hard hit double in the 6th inning. Of course, they didn't score a run that inning. So, a case of balls that were not finding their way into play or getting down. And, we talked about how low this team's average on balls in play has been, and some of it's bad luck because it's just unsustainable for it to be that low. But at the same time, we've talked about how their hard hit rate has been terrible again this year. They don't hit the ball hard, so you drive a lot of your own luck by hitting the ball hard. So it's kind of a compounded problem. So today, on Thursday or Wednesday, I should say, some of the balls found grass that they haven't in the last couple of weeks. And I think the team just needed that maybe to, Stephen Vogt after Tuesday's loss said, I'm not seeing any guys pressing. I see a lot of guys who are, because I talked about how I was going to predict what quotes he was going to say because the post-game press conference.
A lot of guys who aren't pressing but are pressing by his own statement.
Well, he said, I don't see anybody pressing. I see a lot of guys who are just trying to be the guy that comes through with the big hit. And I'm like, that you're not saying the word pressing, but you're describing what it sounds like. Like that's a great thesaurus you got going there. It sounds like they're pressing, and I'm not surprised. Like, again, losing is not fun for anybody. I know a lot of people again have gone through this and said like, oh, it looks like they're not trying. And even Andre said in the broadcast, like the dugout was quiet in the 6th inning. It didn't look great. And he's like, this is usually a loud dugout, and they're about as quiet as I've ever seen them. And, losing does take its toll on everybody. It's not fun to show up every day, and it's hard to – baseball is hard enough when it's 162 games. And that's why consistency is so important, because it's a 6-month grind from March or February to August or to September and October, right? And consistency is so hard in baseball. So that's why it's important to try to show up and be the same person every day, because that's what's going to get you through a season. But sometimes you just don't know how to do that until you've been through it. And you have to learn how to come out of the other side of these slumps better for it. And Tanner Bybee had a good quote post-game on Wednesday. I know these post-game press conferences don't usually say much, but he goes, every team goes through these periods. And they do. All teams do. I mean, again, the Rangers had a terrible August in 2023. They won the World Series. I'm not saying the Guardians of the 2023 Rangers.
You just heard Justin.
Yes, hit our friends up at FanDuel for that one. But I mean, all teams are going to struggle, and the best teams are the ones that come out on the other side better for it. And the Guardians will have to prove that, because this, the Yankees game last week, the extra inning game, I said this might be the biggest win of the season. Well, it was only the biggest win of the season on that day. It only matters if you follow it up by making, by capitalizing on it. And then the Rangers series, right? Those were huge wins. This could have been a season-saving, season turnaround, or a second half turnaround. And
maybe there's no such thing as that. Maybe that's the bigger takeaway.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there is such a thing as that, because I think it only matters how you show up the next day and you pile good days up in a row, right? Like, you have to show up on Friday and you have to hit the ball and you've got to make the plays. And all the Guardians can do at this point. They're in first place, which is good. They're still in first place. All they can do at this point is take it a day at a time. They have to stack up good days on good days. So it was a big win because they came back, and that feels good. I think that's good for the team psychology. But at the same time, it only matters if you follow it up with a similar performance. Like, it has to be a springboard, right?
Sure. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're all hoping for. Like, it'd be nice to see them take a step forward.
Yeah. We'll talk more about the psychology of streaks and all that kind of stuff.
And I've got
Jeff's got a good stat.
I've expanded on it while we're sitting here. It's actually quite haunting. So you have that to look forward to in the second half of the show.
Well, we were positive in the first segment. Jeff's going to bring us down in the second segment, but we'll talk about that stat. We'll talk about, a Class A season, because it's just getting ridiculous at this point. And we'll talk about the tale of two halves for the Guardians a little bit. We'll talk about the schedule the rest of the way, and we'll get to September call-ups as well on the rest of today's Lockdown Guardians. All right. I have my liquid IV right here. I've got my firecracker. I love this flavor, guys. I really do. I'm drinking it like every day at this point. It's been hot here in Cleveland the last couple of days. It's finally cooled off right about now as we're recording. But when you're watching baseball outside, again, Tuesday night, I absolutely need it in Lake County. I'll be at the game Friday, so if I'm at Lake County on Friday, I will be there Friday night. I will be bringing some liquid IV with me because it's going to be hot out. And honestly, it keeps you really good and hydrated. And this flavor is the best I think I've ever had from them. I've had the lemon lime. I've had the cherry. I know Jeff's had the watermelon. He loves the watermelon. But, man, I feel great drinking this stuff, to be honest with you. I think hydration makes everybody feel good. You don't realize that. Like Jeff was saying before the show, he hasn't drinking a lot of coffee. He needs more coffee because energy-wise, he's been struggling since school started again. But, hydration really makes a difference in how you feel. So I think that's a great benefit of liquid IV. It makes me feel a lot better to stay hydrated, whether it's hot or just because I don't drink enough water, honestly. And liquid IV hydrates better than just water. So Terrapure, live a little more, 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water, hydrates better than just water alone. 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients. No more thirsty summers. No more being thirsty at high school football games when it's hot on Fridays. College football starts on Saturday, same thing. When you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV, get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV. Go to liquidiv.com. Use code LOCKEDON MLB at checkout. 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. And I love our friends over at Game Time. I was just checking out Game Time tonight. I'm going to be buying some Ohio State tickets soon. I was just kind of checking on some of the prices right now in terms of the game I want to go to. And the cool thing about Game Time is if you check out Game Time Picks, which is new right now, it's going to talk to you about, it's going to show you amazing deals, super deals, cheapest deals, great deals. It ranks them for you. And it basically tells you like the price for this seat compared to other games or just your seat in general. If it's a great deal based on what normally you would pay for this. And the best thing about Game Time, again, is the closer the game gets, the lower the prices go. So you want to be able to take advantage of the last-minute deals and let Game Time Picks tell you which deals are really the best. I always turn on all-in pricing because that way when I put tickets in my shopping cart or whatever, it tells me exactly what I'm paying out the door. I don't have to go to checkout and see, well, where did this $80 come from? It didn't say that before. Turn the all-in pricing on you, and that way you know ahead of time what the best deal for you is and what you want to pay. Check out their deal right now. You can, if you're in the Arizona area, you want to go to the Dodgers Diamondbacks game on Labor Day, 50% off the tickets on that right now, only on Game Time. So make sure you take advantage of that deal of the Labor Day offer. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use our code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create the account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. Lots of stuff going on in Major League Baseball these days. You got the Giants putting guys on waivers. The Twins just got swept by the Braves. That's good for the Guardians. I'm sure our pal Sully at Locked On MLB is going to be talking about some of those storylines this week on Locked On MLB. So after you're done listening to Locked On Guardians, check out our buddy Sully over at Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff, bring the cold shower and bring the room down.
Okay, so I've updated this tweet multiple times. So I had a tweet yesterday that people liked, that the last 5 players that Cleveland has drafted or signed and developed to play 2 full years of over 100 games are Stephen Kwan, Jose Ramirez, Frankie Lindor, Jason Kipnis, and Lonnie Chisenhall. If you want to make it just guys who have been drafted, then you take out Jose and it's Ryan Garco. If you want to make it
some Ryan Garco,
well, he's the 5th most recent player they have drafted who's played in 100 games in 2 seasons for this org. And if you go the last 10 players drafted and or signed as an international free agent to appear 2 years of 100 games in Cleveland, it's those 5 I mentioned. Well, 6 with Garco, plus Johnny Peralta, Enar Diaz, Holbert Cabrera, and Jim Thome. You have to go back to Jim Thome to get to number 10 of guys that they have drafted or signed, because Thome was at least playing here in 99, 2000. What was his last year?
02 is his last
02.
year.
Yeah. So he was here in 02. And that's why I have him, even though some guys maybe were drafted after him and had a cup of coffee. But in terms of guys who actually were still playing, you have to go back to Jim Thome. Now, as much as this, people love to rag on the current front office, I would say, hold up. John Hart was abysmal when it came to the draft. He was just absolutely abysmal. It's really, really bad.
So is it John Hart, though, or was it John Mirabelli, who he wouldn't get rid of?
Well, Mirabelli was part of the problem under Shapiro. So I don't know who it was for Hart.
It's
but
both of them, right?
No, because it changed. Yeah.
I don't know
but it was Shapiro was equally terrible. Like, I wrote an article years ago that maybe you can find on the Internet Archive for Indians Baseball Insider, where I talked about the greatest player from the 60th round down. And then I also did I still have it. I could always post it somewhere. I took all the WAR data for every single draft from like 95 to 2015. And the best team was Oakland. I was back when Oakland was good, before the current front office. Worst team in baseball was Cleveland during that span. And that's mostly Hart and Shapiro. They were the worst drafting team in baseball in terms of produced WAR. And that's counting guys you didn't even sign. That's giving them credit for Connor Jackson and Tim Lincecum, because that was simpler than subtracting it. So their data was even higher because they were getting credit for Tim Lincecum in that time period. But number 2 was Cincinnati. And then you had about a 6-foot, 10-foot chasm, the Yankees, and another 10-foot chasm, and then the rest of baseball. It was Oakland and St. Louis, which were, teams who were consistently good in that span. But this, it's more of a, I don't know if I want to say fun thing to look at. It's just kind of one of those random things. But this is part of their problem, especially because, after Frankie, we all got very excited because, that 2011 draft was one of the greatest drafts and one of Cleveland's best drafts. And then they drafted nothing but hitters. And even the guys, Clint Frazier, Mike Pappy, Bradley Zimmer. Zimmer, by the way, I think he played 99 games. If he had one more game that year he got hurt, he would have made the list. Brennan is now 5 games away, so he'll knock Thome off a list in 5 games. And that's the only time I'm ever going to say Will Brennan's going to knock Jim Thome off a list of anything. But yeah, it's interesting how ineffective just in general. Like I now I'm like, do I have to do this for every organization? Do I have to sit down and find the time and see if Cleveland is how big of an anomaly they are? But it's weird, right? Like, and you and I were also just going through the data in general, trying to figure out what's wrong with this team. We found out they're the worst team in baseball when it comes to the cutter, which when I was in Milwaukee was throwing them cutters. Every pitcher who had a cutter was throwing a cutter, and Kansas City was throwing the cutter. And we also looked at the data. They were the worst team in baseball against velocity. So velocity and cutters, like, we finally figured out why is everything falling apart. Well, teams got a book And these guys can't handle velocity. They can't handle cutters, and that's all you're going to see. They're very good against was it sliders or curveballs? I want to say. So we should see less of those. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of dig. I think the problem too we're seeing is what you talked about specifically in the first part is they're not hitting the ball hard, right? This whole draft approach of contact has not worked. I do have some hope that it might have worked in 2 years of Yurgo's draft class with the Kafis and the Cooper Ingalls, who seem to have been able to add some power to what was kind of pedestrian at the time. We'll have to see. Power is the most expensive thing to add. Power pitching, power hitting. I think in a lot of ways this front office, in my opinion, is an A+ front office. I am not calling for anyone's job. I think they do it as good as anyone. I would love, it will never happen. They will never do this. I would love to sit down and even off the record, just can you explain this approach to me? Like, why do you punt on power when it's the hardest thing to add and seems to be one of the harder things to develop? I would love to know why.
Yeah, I think the gamble with their approaches, they're having a hard time hitting the ball hard. It's a hard thing to do. They seem to feel like they have some sort of secret sauce. They think that it's easy. I don't want to say easy, but I think they must believe they have some sort of formula to add exit velo. They feel like it, and they're not wrong to an extent. I don't think. I mean, obviously, a lot of people that work there are smarter than I am, so I'm not going to sit here and say they're wrong and I'm right because I don't know better than them. I'm just a guy with the microphone, and someone decided to pair me with you on this podcast. But
well, I think earned.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it is easier to take a guy who can make good contact to add power than it is to take a guy who can't make contact and try to teach him contact. Like that's like, we and I talk about chase rate all the time. That's the biggest problem is they have a ton of guys who just chase bad pitches, because they make a ton of contact. I don't think it's an exit velocity problem. If I'm being honest, I think it's a pitch.
But they also don't hit the. I mean, they have the worst exit velocity in baseball, so it's still
they do. But I think a lot.
They sold their soul for contact, and it just doesn't work. I agree with you. Like you can't chase, but you also, if you're going to chase, you need to hit the ball hard.
I think the reason the exit velocities tend to be. I mean, I don't know if there's any proof of this, but I think the reason the exit velocities tend to be so low is because they are making bad swing decisions. So they're chasing pitches that you can't hit hard. If you
Noel still hits them hard, Jack Caglione in college still hit him hard. You can still hit those hard. I mean, it's not going to lead to good outcomes. It's going to lead to poor outcomes either way, but you can still hit the ball hard in those spots.
Noel still makes bad. The reason Noel's average exit velocity in the minors and even the majors is still low is because lower than it should be for a guy with his power is because he makes poor contact on those swing decisions. You make bad swing decisions, you hit the ball weakly in play. So I think a lot of, I wonder how much of their exit velocity issue, when you look at the data, is that they are making bad swing decisions and they're making contact on pitches they can't hit hard. If you dial back on swing decisions and you say, it's easier said than done, and say, like Juan Soto, this is why Travis Bazan is so interesting, because he talks about Juan Soto and not swinging at pitches he can't do damage with, because you don't put a ball, like, again, an 85-mile-an-hour ground ball to second doesn't mean it's a good ball in play. The guy's going to make the play most of the time. But dialing back the swing decision, saying, if I can't hammer this ball, I'm not going to swing at it. And that's kind of their problem. They are swinging at everything, making poor contact. I wonder if you dialed some of that back, would their average exit velocity go up, because they're trying to focus on pitches they think they can actually drive, which is what they should be doing. So I wonder how much of that's baked in as well.
And just one more comment on this, and we got to run to break here in a second, is a lot of people then ask this question, and I get a lot like, so why don't they improve it? Because chase rates and swing decisions are about the most static thing we see in the minors. Like guys who chase in college chase, like almost no one.
It's hard to improve.
You see improvement rates are typically 7% or less from what I saw in the data when I looked at it earlier this year. Like it doesn't improve. It's one of those things, like if you're going to swing, it's like, so many of these guys, it's like when you and I play MLB The Show, like you can't stop swinging even when you know you need to be more patient. It's the same thing for hitters.
Yeah, I swing at pitches all the time in the show I shouldn't swing at, but I'm not a major league hitter. We'll talk more about Emmanuel Clase. Just streaks in general and the psychology of handling them and being pro athletes. We'll get into some minor league stuff, a tale of two halves, all that kind of stuff, all on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians.
But first, let's talk about our friends at PrizePicks. Right now, PrizePicks is giving you a free one. That's right. They're giving you one for free through September 7th, through the end of September. All September. If Caleb Williams throws more than 1 yard in a game, guess what? You won. So you can win in PrizePicks. You need to get 4 wins. At least 4 wins is how it works. All you do is, 2 to 6 stat-based projections. I had it wrong. So all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 stat-based projections and watch the winnings roll in. They're giving you a free one. Caleb Williams, he's going to throw more than 1 yard. I feel confident about that. And I haven't watched Caleb Williams once. So I know nothing about him. I believe he can throw more than 1 yard. So you just got to do one more. It's simple as picking more or less. Will CJ Stroud sophomore season result in more or less than 4,150 yards? I would always say less because of sophomore slumps, but I know the Ohio State fans won't be happy there. So right now, you want to head over to PrizePicks or download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 off instantly when you play. $5. That code is LOCKEDONMLB at PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game.
Guardians are off on Thursday, a much well-timed off day, much needed one. But they are back in action on Friday with the Pirates coming to town. You can check out all the action. If you're going to a high school football game, bring your radio, bring whatever you need, your phone. You can listen on the SiriusXM app by just searching Guardians. I think we could skip the psychology talk a little bit. And we're just talking about how just winning that game hopefully breaks the ice in the locker room. I don't want to say in the locker room, but just
pressing
breaks the
is
ice
a real thing. Pressing is a absolute real thing.
Yeah, I think you need to see, they've talked about it this year too, about like Josh Naylor when he was struggling early in the year and he was hitting the ball hard, they said, and it was like, or it was last year, this year. And they were saying, you can't chase results. You have to chase good process and the results will follow. I think as a pro athlete, especially in baseball, where as you're a hitter and, 7 out of 10 times you're going to fail and you're really good. And honestly, you're going to fall. You're going to fail, more than that. And you could still be a good player. I think you need for your psyche to see the results just be positive for you to feel good about your next at bat or what you're doing, what you're working on. Because the hardest thing in baseball too is chasing that. Like you go out there and you have a bad game, you have a bad week, and some guys will want to like change things, right? They'll want to go in and like, I need to change this, I need to tinker with this, and you're just chasing adjustments, and it's never good. So that's why we talk about consistency. I think that win in general, hopefully, again, makes eases up on them.
Nice thing was Quan reaching base 3 times. We have not really seen that this year.
Yeah, he had 2 hits and a walk.
And I also want to point out, maybe this is me being Sally Sunshine over here, but Lane Thomas did something 3 games in a row. He reached base twice in one game. He had the RBI in yesterday's game, and then he got on base, and nothing else. His speed has caused problems. It caused distractions. So,
Jeff, he was on base because he pinch ran.
I know, but he still did something once he was on base. He stole second, allowed that. Like, I am looking for incremental improvements for them. I'm trying to find positives. Could be worse. Could be the Twins who already cut their midseason trade acquisition.
Goodbye to Trevor Richards.
And just a quick note, Taylor Rogers, Thairo Estrada, Tyler Matzik. Don't ask. Rogers makes $12 million next year. Matzik has been hurt for 2 straight years, and Estrada has been terrible. So we can move on without asking that question.
Yeah. Just kind of looking at where the Guardians are, like I saw someone post a graphic on Twitter that the Guardians since June 26th would be 4th in division, and if you count the standings from them, obviously they play a whole 162. But June 25th was that big game against Baltimore where they scored a ton of runs. They went up 8 in the division. I think that was the 10-8 win in Baltimore. And since that date, they are they would be 10 games out of first place compared to what Detroit, Minnesota, and Kansas City have done. So things have gone pretty much downhill since that win.
Luckily, you play a full season.
Right, you play a full season. But I was just kind of curious because I saw that and I wanted to look at the stats and see, like, okay, what happened here? So We talked about how that was what 60% of the season,
60%, almost exactly 60, 58 technically, but we can say 60.
Yeah, so it's still a good chunk of the season, enough to say like, okay, that should have been enough where it was like, I don't know, the truth's always in the middle, right? So the Guardians definitely weren't as good as they were on June 25th, where they were that much above 500. All those guys were hitting. I don't think they're as bad a team as they've been since then either, especially since the second half.
I think both those statements are very fair.
Yeah. But you can see the drop off here. What's changed, right? Like Stephen Kwan had an unsustainable 188 WRC plus with a 395 BABIP. David Fry, 167 WRC plus, 356 BABIP. Daniel Sheeman was 17 games, but he was lighting the world on fire as well. Jose was a little better than he is now. Josh Naylor had a slugging percentage over 500 at that point of the season. Like he was crushing it,
which is amazing because he was not in June in general. He had a rough June.
Yeah,
he was awesome at the start of the year.
Will Brennan was at a 105 WRC plus at that point. Even Tyler Freeman and Andres Jimenez, even struggling, those guys were still in the high 80s, which is like, okay, that's for guys that aren't like major contributors to your lineup. That's not
You'll
terrible.
Take it.
Yeah. Since that date, so June 26th until Tuesday, John Kenzie Noel, 157 WRC plus, leads the Guardians. He has as many home runs as Jose in that time in 13 less games. Jose dropped to a 131, which, still great. Josh Naylor at an even 100 WRC plus, but that line to get there for him is 220, 313, 387. That's pretty awful. And then you have Angel Martinez, who hasn't been up since early in the month, and he's at 95. And everybody else is below there. You've got David Fry down to an 80 and Kwan down to a 74. And again, I know nobody wants to hear this, but for this team to be the team they were the first 60% of the season, you're not going to get, 188 WRC plus Kwan, right? But can you get him to be a 120? Can you get David Fry to be a 100? I don't know. Bo Naylor has been a 79 WRC plus since then, which is somehow an improvement over what he was doing before then. But, we said coming into the year that he was one of the most important players.
Third most important hitter.
Hit. Yeah, he had a home run on Wednesday and the win, which was huge because that kind of did spark them a little bit. That's great to see. You just need some of these guys to, Terry Francona always said, guys generally find their level. So if they were above their level in the first half, got to be below their level now. You just want them to find their level, I think, the rest of the way. And maybe that happens in September. Maybe they've made some adjustments. I know it's going to be hard to tell. Maybe it's just a slump. We talked about how they struggle against velocity. That's definitely an issue for them. Cutters are all the rage right now. Everyone's throwing a ton of cutters.
Cleveland teaches their own pitches. That's one of the pitches.
Yeah,
they work
everybody
with guys
does.
On. Yeah.
So real quickly before we get out of here today, two things that we want to note. I don't think we're going to get the September call-ups, but we'll talk about that tomorrow's show because we're going to do a mailbag. So rest of the season for the schedule, just in general, Cleveland's schedule, it's a little difficult. You got the Royals again after this. You have the Dodgers. That's tough. But after that, you have the White Sox, who they need to take care of business against. The Rays should be beatable, and they struggled early in the year. You got the Twins again. The Cardinals aren't good. The Reds aren't good. And you finish with Houston. I think against Houston, you want to be 4 games up in the division with 3 to play with that last weekend, or 3.5 up. That might clinch it. I don't know. We'll see. The Royals, their schedule the rest of the year is not exactly easy either. They have Houston this week for 4 for hosting Cleveland. They play Minnesota, so you want some cannibalization there. Then they play the Yankees. Tough break there. Then they get the Pirates. So the Pirates are the Pirates. They have the Tigers after that, who are playing very good ball right now. So we'll see how that goes. They get the Giants, who aren't very good. Then they end the year with Washington, Atlanta. Washington's not that great. And then obviously Atlanta's pretty good. I will say the Twins' schedule the rest of the year is much easier. They've got Toronto, Tampa Bay. They do have the Royals, but they have the Angels, the Reds. They got the Red Sox, who are fighting for a playoff spot but are struggling. Then they end the year with Miami and Baltimore. Baltimore's tough, but Miami stinks. So it's going to be close the rest of the way. It just is. We should also note real quick.
Yep.
Note about Eric Sabrowski.
You beat me to it.
Yeah. So he didn't get in the game, but we want to give Eric Sabrowski some love because minor league chasing in the minor leagues is really difficult, like the grind of minor league baseball. So Eric Sabrowski's 26. He was kind of an emergency call up just for an extra arm, just in case on Wednesday. He didn't get in the game, but he was a minor league Rule 5 pick. So the minor league phase, you take a guy and he's on your team forever. There's no stipulations about how long he's got to be on a certain roster. Eric Sabrowski's also had 2 Tommy John surgeries, so he didn't get in the game, but he got called up. And I think that's just cool to know for guys who grind in the minor leagues forever, looking for that one moment. Again, minor league Rule 5 picks almost never make it. Guys who had 2 Tommy Johns, even harder. So cool moment for Eric Sabrowski, at least to be there and get his, good for him.
This is it. It's a good move. Like he worked his tail off, and these are the moments that is good for the organization to do that. Like,
I imagine he'll be back down when Alex Cobb comes back or whoever. He may not be up on Friday, so he may not get into a game on Friday or the weekend, but he got up and he got a jersey in the clubhouse. His name was on the lineup card as far as he was officially available for the game. So congratulations to Eric for that. That's, again, we love seeing that. We didn't get to September call-ups today, but I will note Chase Slaughter did leave Wednesday night's game with a possible leg injury late in the game. He kind of came up limping after reaching on an error later in the game. We'll see what happens there. It's just a leg issue at this point. I don't have any more information on that. Locked On Guardians listeners, don't forget, check out our code for the Captain's September 12th playoff game. I will be there. We're going to try to record something with Jeff while he's at home in Milwaukee or wherever, in Wisconsin somewhere. But I'll be there. We'll do something. We'll do a meetup. We'll all sit in the same section. So use our link to buy your tickets, and I'll put it in the episode description again. But the code's locked down. You'll get 20% off your ticket to the Captain's playoff game, and we'll all be hanging out and watching the game, talking Guardians, talking prospects. Tomorrow's show, mailbag. So get us your mailbag questions.
And we'll talk about Bazana. We have to talk about your
Bazana,
We have to talk about your Bazana. Thank you all for joining us again. Thank you to all of our everydayers. John, you're not in the comments. I hope you're still with us. I know it's been rough, but we need some of that positivity. And thank you. Oh, I'm gonna have to give a shout out to some of the people who stayed positive. Who was the person you knew who was in the comments had a good comment about how the comments reflected life?
Oh, Rick Bell, my buddy Rick Bell. What's up, Rick? Carlos Santana's still going to hit that 30 home run mark one day. Or he did. He did. But again, thank you all for joining us on this ride. It's been an up and down year, but this is still a playoff team. They'll get there. Trust us. Thank you for joining us. And go Guardians, go.